6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English. I'm Rob.
And I'm Neil.
Now, Neil, are you a tidy person?
Me? Oh dear, no. You should see my wardrobe.
Your wardrobe?
Yes. Tidy people keep their clothes in a wardrobe. I just dump a lot of my clothes on the floor. So, a floordrobe.
Ah, yes. Well, it sounds as if you could use a bit of decluttering. Clutter is the word for general mess and untidiness when you have too many things, too much stuff. These days, the idea of decluttering is very popular.
Ooh, I love a good declutter. Trouble is, I hate throwing things away.
Well, we might have some advice for you in today's programme. But first, a question. It's about cleaning up. The vacuum cleaner is a machine we use to clean our houses. When were the first mechanical floor cleaners, which later became vacuum cleaners, invented? Was it A, the 1860s, B, the 1890s, or C, the 1920s?
Well, you know what? I have no idea. So I'll say the 1890s.
OK, well, I'll have the answer later in the programme. The decluttering techniques of Marie Kondo are very popular these days. A UK decluttering expert, Leslie Spellman, appeared on the BBC radio programme You and Yours to discuss the topic. She was asked to describe the basics of the Marie Kondo method. What's the first thing she recommends people start with?
She basically says you have to do things in a certain order. You have to start with your clothes, then you move on to your books, then you move on to paperwork, then you go on to something called kimono, which is kind of everything else, kitchens, bathrooms, garages, lofts, etc. And then finally you tackle sentimental things.
She says that you have to start with your clothes before moving on through different categories of clutter.
The verb she uses for dealing with these things is to tackle. To tackle something means to deal with it, to sort it out.
And the last things she says you need to tackle are sentimental things. These are things that you have an emotional connection to, such as old letters and photographs. I have to say, those are the things I find most difficult to get rid of. I'm very sentimental like that.
I think you just have to be ruthless, Rob. Either that or buy a bigger house. Right, let's listen to Leslie Spellman again.
She basically says you have to do things in a certain order. You have to start with your clothes, then you move on to your books, then you move on to paperwork, then you go on to something called kimono, which is kind of everything else, kitchens, bathrooms, garages, lofts, etc. And then finally you tackle sentimental things.
So why is it that decluttering is such big business these days? And there are many people and companies offering advice and services. Here's Leslie Spellman again with her thoughts on this.
I think there's been a big shift, really. So my generation, my parents, definitely came from that make, do and mend era post-war in the sort of 20th century. And then all of a sudden, people started to get a little bit more money. Things became more affordable. You can buy 5 tops for £5 each. And people have done that. And that's allowed consumerism to kind of go crazy in the 21st century.
So what does she put our need for decluttering down to?
Well, first she says that there has been a shift in our behaviour. This is a way of saying that there has been a change in the way we behave. We used to make, do and mend much more. This phrase means that we made full use of what we had, and if something broke, we tried to fix it.
And these days, we seem to have more money, and many goods have got cheaper and we just like buying stuff. Or, as she says, consumerism has gone crazy. Let's listen to her again.
I think there's been a big shift, really. So my generation, my parents, definitely came from that make, do and mend era post-war in the sort of 20th century. And then all of a sudden, people started to get a little bit more money. Things became more affordable. You can buy 5 tops for £5 each. And people have done that. And that's allowed consumerism to kind of go crazy in the 21st century.
Time to tidy up today's vocabulary. But first, let's have the answer to the question. Earlier, I asked you, when were the first mechanical floor cleaners invented? Was it in A, the 1860s, B, the 1890s, or C, the 1920s? And Neil, you said...
I guessed at the 1890s.
Sadly not. The correct answer is the 1860s. So well done to anyone who got that right. Now on with today's vocabulary. The first word we had was floordrobe.
Yes, this is a word to describe a pile of clothes that someone keeps on the floor rather than in a wardrobe.
Well, I don't have a floordrobe, but I do have a chairdrobe. I guess you can work out what that means. Anyway, it seems we both have too much clutter, which is the untidiness caused by having too many things.
And this leads us to the popular pastime of decluttering, which is throwing away things to make our homes neat and tidy.
Clutter in my life is an issue I haven't tackled yet. I haven't tried to fix it or sort it out.
One area that the experts say you need to tackle is sentimental things. These are things which you have an emotional connection to, maybe old letters and photographs, for example.
We then looked at the word shift, which was a way of saying change. There has been a shift or a change in the way we think about things.
Yes, rather than an attitude of make, do and mend, which means an attitude of being content with what you've got and fixing things if they break, we've become part of a consumerist culture where we like to buy more and more stuff.
But we still find it hard to throw things away.
Yes, indeed we do. Well, it's time for us to collect our scripts and declutter the studio. We look forward to your company next time, and until then, you can find us in all the usual places, online and on social media. Just look for BBC Learning English. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Phil.
And I'm Beth. Phil, what makes home special for you? Maybe it's sleeping in your own bed, the view from the window, or a loved family pet. What makes you feel like you're home, Phil?
You know what? I think it's just relaxing on my sofa in my living room.
Very nice.
Well, you might not realise it, but for your brain, one of the strongest identifiers of home is smell. Listen as BBC presenters Marnie Chesterton and Tristan Artone describe the smells which give them the feeling of home.
My granddad's house smelt of pine and damp and musty books.
I know my mom's perfume, my dad's preferred soap.
In this programme, we'll be finding out why our sense of smell is so important to feeling at home, even when we don't notice it. As always, we'll be introducing some useful new vocabulary, and if you head over to our website, bbclearningenglish.com, you'll find a transcript of the programme to read along with as you listen, and there's a free worksheet too.
Good idea, Beth. But now it's time for my question. The sense of smell is incredibly powerful, but not everyone has it. A small amount of the population is anosmic, meaning they can't smell. So, according to research at the University of Reading, what percentage of people have no sense of smell? Is it A, 2%, B, 5%, or C, 7%?
Oh, I'm going to say B, 5%.
Well, we'll find out the correct answer later in the programme. Have you ever come back home from holiday and noticed a strange smell in your house? If you have, don't worry, it's not bad. In fact, there's a scientific reason for it, as science writer Tristan Artone explained to BBC World Service programme Unexpected Elements.
One thing I've been thinking about is that every house or home has, a smell to it. You might really notice this in your own home when you come back from a long trip and you step through your front door and things smell, just kind of a bit weird. While there's a good chance your house might smell strange because it's been closed up for a few weeks, there's also a chance you might be smelling your home as it usually smells, but you just don't notice it when you're there.
Tristan says that when you return home after being away, there's a good chance your house smells weird, an adjective meaning strange or unusual. If you say there's a good chance that something will happen, you mean there's a high likelihood or probability of it.
The truth is that every home has a smell, although we're so used to it, we usually don't notice. When we breathe in, receptor cells in the nose detect molecules in the air and send them to olfactory organs in the brain. These analyse the smells for danger. The reason you can't smell your own home is that it isn't a threat to you. Here's science writer Tristan Artone again explaining more to BBC World Service programme Unexpected Elements.
Well, by filtering out common, non-threatening smells, it makes it easier to detect things out of the ordinary that might be dangerous. So, for example, if you forget about your toast and it starts to burn, you can typically smell that quickly because it's a change to the environment that you're in. Then the other parts of your brain kick in to understand the smell of smoke as a potential harm or threat. But even if we can't smell our own homes, the scent of them still matters because it's entangled with our recognition of comfort and security.
By filtering out familiar smells, our brains are able to detect other smells which are out of the ordinary, unusual or uncommon, and which may be dangerous. To filter something out means to remove or separate something unwanted from something else. For example, filtering out the smell of home means we notice the smell of burning toast or other smells alerting us to possible danger.
Even though we don't usually notice the scent, the particular smell of our home, it still has an effect on the brain's limbic system, which handles memory and emotion. This explains why smell has such a strong effect on our feelings and why we feel comfortable and safe at home.
Right, Phil, isn't it time to reveal the answer to your question?
Yes, it is. I asked you what percentage of the population is anosmic. That means they can't smell. And the answer is B, 5%, which is what you said, I think.
It is, yeah.
Well done.
Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we've learnt in this programme, starting with anosmic, meaning having no sense or a limited sense of smell.
The adjective weird means strange, odd, or bizarre.
When someone says there's a good chance something will happen, they mean it's quite likely to happen.
The phrase out of the ordinary means unusual, uncommon, or exceptional.
If you filter something out, you remove or separate something unwanted from a substance.
And finally, a scent is a distinctive smell, often a pleasant one, although it can also mean the smell made by an animal. Once again, our 6 minutes are up, but if you enjoyed listening to this programme, you'll find many more, along with a worksheet with a quiz you can try, on our website, bbclearningenglish.com. See you there soon.
Bye!
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to 6 Minute English, the programme where we explore an interesting topic and bring you 6 bits of useful vocabulary. I'm Neil.
And I'm Rob. Today we're talking about first impressions and how they're often wrong.
So let's start with the term first impression. It's the idea or opinion that you have about someone after meeting them for only a short time.
It's very natural to make a quick judgment about someone based on their appearance or facial expression.
We're going to be hearing about the research of Professor Alexander Todorov from Princeton University in the US. First, though, a question. How long does he say it takes to form an impression about someone's face? Is it A, under 1 second, B, 1 second, or C, 6 seconds?
I'll go for B, 1 second.
Well, we'll find out if you're right or not later on in the programme.
So Alexander Todorov has been researching our impressions. His tests asked people to decide whether they thought faces were dominant, competent, trustworthy, or extroverted.
Let's just look at those words for a second. Dominant means being strongest or most important. Competent means being able to do things.
While if you're trustworthy, it means people trust you. You are worth their trust. And being extroverted means you are energetic and enjoy spending time with others.
So what did he find out? Faces that look happy and feminine, like a woman, were rated as more trustworthy.
While faces that were more masculine, like a man, were seen as more dominant.
Wider faces with big eyes were seen as more extroverted.
Now, the important thing is that Todorov says that these judgments aren't accurate. Someone who looks competent isn't necessarily competent.
So what does this mean in practice? Here's Professor Todorov.
Trustworthiness, dominance, and attractiveness are the 3 big things that we form impressions of people. But interestingly, we have done some work predicting the electoral success of politicians, and the judgment that is most predictive of who is going to win the election is perceived competence. And this is not random at all, because if you ask voters what is the most important attribute of a politician, competence is the one on the top.
OK, so this is actually quite significant. People say that the most important attribute or quality for a politician is competence, the ability to do things.
Well, that sounds fair enough. But because we make judgments based on appearance, this can actually affect how people vote.
If voters believe or perceive someone to be competent, they're more likely to vote for him or her.
He says this applies especially to people who are less educated about politics. They're more likely to be influenced by appearance.
He says this applies to around 25% of voters, so the number of people who go with their gut is large enough to influence the outcomes of elections.
Wow. To go with your gut. That means to make a decision which isn't based on rational thought. It's based on instinct, on a feeling, on your gut.
Yes, your gut is your stomach and the organs in your belly. So, can we tell nothing from a person's face?
Todorov says faces carry useful information about things, like a person's mental state and whether they're tired or sick, but they don't tell you about a person's character.
Indeed, it's not only elections where this counts. We also judge during job interviews and meetings.
So, what can we do to minimise the chances of being affected? Should we just close our eyes when we meet people?
Well, it's not such a bad idea. There's the example of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Back in the 1950s, it was entirely made up of male musicians. Then they introduced blind auditions. In other words, they listened to new musicians without looking at them.
OK, and what happened? I guess many more women were selected.
Exactly, around 50%. Of course, gender and race are also huge factors in how we perceive faces. Todorov says we tend to react most positively to faces that look like our own.
Right, well, I guess we just need to take a deep breath and try not to judge too much.
Easier said than done, I'm afraid, especially when we judge so quickly. But do we do it in under a second, 1 second, or 6 seconds?
Aha, I said 1 second.
According to Todorov, it takes under 1 second.
I think it's safe to say it's very fast. So shall we quickly go through today's vocabulary?
OK, first up, first impression. The first judgment you make about something. What was your first impression of me, Rob?
Well, I thought you were very trustworthy and extroverted.
Well, isn't that convenient and accurate? Because those were exactly the two adjectives I wanted to look at next. Being trustworthy is important in life. It means people trust you.
And being extroverted is more of a character type. Extroverts like to be with people and are often seen as confident, whereas the opposite, introverts, usually need to spend time on their own and aren't as loud.
Both of these are interesting attributes or qualities. You could say that mathematical ability is an essential attribute for an engineer.
And competence is the number one attribute for a politician. Although people don't always vote depending on actual competence, they base it on their perception.
What they see or perceive as competence. Perceived competence might be different from actual competence.
Yes, in many situations we tend to go with our guts. We make decisions based on deep feelings. Do you do that, Neil?
Yes, some things you can think about too much. When I left my last job, I really just went with my gut. It felt like the right thing to do.
Of course, because it meant coming to work here with me.
Naturally. So that's it for our chat about first impressions. For more, do visit our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube pages, and of course our website.
Bye for now.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Sam.
And I'm Neil.
Come on, Neil, let's make a start. I've got a deadline to meet today, and I haven't finished my work yet.
Let me guess. It's because you delayed and put your work off until the last minute, as usual. You're a real procrastinator, Sam. Someone who keeps delaying things that need to be done.
What can I say? I work better when a deadline is approaching.
I see. But did you know that people who procrastinate have higher levels of stress and lower well-being? Procrastination is also linked with lower financial and career success, so there's a lot of reasons not to do it.
In this programme, we're discussing procrastination, the act of delaying things that must be done until later, often because they're difficult, boring or unpleasant. And as usual, we'll be learning some new vocabulary along the way.
So, without wasting any more time, I have a question for you, Sam. The fact that procrastinating or putting things off is bad for us doesn't stop people doing it. According to recent research by DePaul University in Chicago, what percentage of people procrastinate so much that it interferes with their day-to-day life? Is it A, 10%, B, 20%, or C, 30%?
I'll guess that around 10% of people have a serious procrastination problem.
Okay, Sam, we'll find out the answer later in the programme. Sam is certainly not alone in putting things off until the last minute. Here's Ella Al-Shamahi, presenter of BBC Radio 4's Why Do We Do That?, talking to comedian Ishan Akbar about his procrastination habit.
Would you say, Ishan, that you're a procrastinator?
I am a serial procrastinator, without a shadow of a doubt.
Why do you think you procrastinate?
Over the years, I've told myself that I procrastinate because I work better under pressure. That's what I've told myself.
Ishan thinks that he is a procrastinator without a shadow of a doubt, a phrase which is used to emphasise that you are completely certain of something.
Ishan also says that, like Sam, he works better under pressure, when he feels stressed or anxious because of having too much to do. But maybe also, like Sam, Ishan has a problem organising his workload and managing his time.
Hang on, Neil. My time management skills are okay, thank you. With me, it's more of an emotional response. I see a mountain of work, feel threatened and think, how on earth will I finish all that?
What Sam says is supported by a theory of human evolution, which explains how putting things off is an emotional response. Back when we were living in caves, life was dangerous and short, and our ancestors were impulsive. They acted suddenly, on instinct, without thinking about the consequences of what they were doing. Back then, being impulsive was a good thing. But in modern life, with work goals and deadlines, when we are impulsive and get distracted, we procrastinate. So, rather than being a problem with time management, Sam should blame her caveman ancestors who acted on impulse.
Let's listen again to comedian Ishan Akbar talking about how he feels when he procrastinates.
A lot of stuff you read about procrastination focuses on the time management element of it.
Yeah.
I've probably got a better sense that, for me, it seems very squarely around the emotional aspect of it. Perhaps I get more emotional gratification from doing it last minute. And I need to understand why I prefer that over the calm serenity of getting things done with oodles of time in my hands.
In the same way that our ancestors felt good living on impulse, Ishan thinks he gets gratification, a feeling of pleasure and satisfaction, from doing things at the last minute. What he doesn't understand is why he prefers to work under pressure instead of finishing calmly with oodles or lots of time.
Unlike Ishan, I'd rather finish my work feeling relaxed, but there never seems to be enough time.
Well, breaking down the task into smaller stages also breaks down the level of threat you feel from your workload. Also, forgiving yourself for procrastinating in the past seems helpful in avoiding procrastinating in the future. So forgive yourself and start making changes, Sam, before you end up like the time wasters in my question. What percentage of people procrastinate so much that it interferes with day-to-day life?
Well, I guessed it was 10%.
Which was the wrong answer, I'm afraid. In fact, around 20% of us have a procrastination habit. So strong, it makes life difficult. Okay, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned from this program on procrastination. Delaying or putting off doing things until later, often because they're difficult, unpleasant, or boring.
The phrase without a shadow of a doubt is used to emphasize that you are completely certain of something.
If you're under pressure, you feel stressed or anxious because of having too much to do.
Impulsive behavior is sudden and spontaneous, done without thinking about the consequences.
Gratification means a feeling of pleasure and satisfaction.
And finally, when you have oodles of something, you have a very large amount of something pleasant, like time, which once again, we've run out of. I'm rushing off to finish my work, Neil, but remember to make time to join us again soon here at 6 Minute English. Bye for now.
Goodbye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to 6 Minute English. I'm Alice.
And I'm Rob.
Did I see you arriving in a huge red pickup truck this morning?
Oh, yes, it's great, isn't it?
It's very big and red. But, Rob, aren't you a supporter of the movement to preserve the environment?
Yes.
A gas-guzzling car for an environmentalist, Rob. Isn't that a contradiction? Aren't you being a hypocrite?
Well, it's very fuel efficient, Alice. It's quite eco-friendly, actually.
Oh, that's ridiculous, and you know it. Hypocrisy is the subject of today's show, and maybe we should start by exploring the meaning of hypocrite. Can you tell me, what did the ancient Greek word hypocrite originally mean? Was it A, actor, B, politician, or C, horse?
OK, that's easy. I think it's B, politician.
Well, we'll find out whether you got the answer right or not later in the show. Now, these days, the meaning has changed, and hypocrite means somebody who says one thing and does another.
Like you telling me not to bite my nails because it's a disgusting habit, and then I see you doing it later the same day.
Well, sometimes it's hard to be consistent. I do think nail biting is disgusting, but then when I'm a bit nervous, I do it without thinking.
Yes, we're often inconsistent in what we say or do, though, aren't we?
Yes.
Inconsistent means changeable.
There is an explanation for us sometimes saying one thing and behaving in a very different way. Let's listen to Professor Clancy Martin at the University of Missouri in the US. He teaches philosophy, so he knows a thing or two about the way we think.
So while you might be enormously compassionate in your role as a teacher or a parent, you might find yourself being quite harsh and direct when it comes to your role as a brother or a sister. So then you see that, now, wait a second, if I've got all these inconsistencies all over the place in my character, can I really say that I am a sincere and authentic individual, or am I just kind of blowing with whichever way my relationship winds kind of incline me?
Professor Clancy Martin. So we play different roles in life, and these roles may seem contradictory, but they're just part of being the same person. Sometimes you're a bit harsh and direct with me, Alice, aren't you? Do you see yourself as my sister? She used to pick on me.
Harsh means stern and unkind. I don't mean to be unkind to you, Rob. Or maybe I could try and be more compassionate towards you. It means show a bit of sympathy and concern now and then.
Offer me good words. At least promise you'll be nice to me. That you'll bring me tea and biscuits.
Well, that's what politicians do. They promise they will do what people want, and often they don't. And it's a big problem for them. Let's talk about politicians and hypocrisy.
They have to express opinions about so many things that it's easy to catch them out being hypocritical. And then we, the public, get morally indignant about it.
Yes, to catch somebody out means to discover they have made a mistake. And morally indignant means being angry about something, according to the principles of right and wrong. Let's listen to Professor Martin again talking about the difficulties of being a politician.
I think in our contemporary democracy, it's become obvious to most of us that the views that we expect from our politicians and the kinds of views that get our politicians elected are maybe completely incongruous with the way they lead their personal lives and what they personally believe. And this is how it can become very morally pernicious, very morally dangerous.
OK, so we elect politicians based on their views, for example, on the environment, on education, on foreign policy, but their public views may be incongruous or not in agreement with their personal views.
And the difference between their public and personal views can be pernicious. It means deadly or destructive.
Politicians are under scrutiny all the time. Their personal lives, their public statements. Now, with social media, a thoughtless comment goes viral or spreads very quickly via the internet.
That's true. And actually, I posted a photo of my red pickup truck earlier.
Oh, has it gone viral, Rob?
No, but there is a negative comment from the local conservationists.
Oh dear. Well, Rob, I think it's time I told you the answer to today's quiz question. I asked, What did the ancient Greek word hypocrite originally describe? Was it A, actor, B, politician, or C, horse?
And I said B, politician.
And you were wrong, I'm afraid. Hippocrates was a technical term for a stage actor and was not considered an appropriate role for a public figure. In Athens, in the 4th century BC, the great orator Demosthenes ridiculed a rival politician who had been a successful actor. Well, we're running out of time, so can we hear the words we learned today?
They are hypocrite, inconsistent, harsh, compassionate, catch somebody out, morally indignant, incongruous, pernicious, go viral.
Well, that's the end of today's 6-Minute English. Don't forget to join us again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.